I have one question. How did it come to this? You haven't understood anything, as well as me. So let's look at that girl's story a little bit closer. 1 week ago, this girl ended up in trouble she never expected to even happen to her. This man in a hat calls her Kirishima Haruna from Kagurazaka 46 Idols. But she's only a standby there. His words made her mad. She didn't agree with anything he said. She even was on TV. Well, her hair was. No response from her to this powerful argument. And to get there, she tried so hard that she spent, 3 million yen. Once a man in a tuxedo named her amount of debt, she suddenly got guilty and ashamed. She didn't want her parents to figure out about her debts, and that's why she asked her boss for help. He offered her a well-paying job in a girls' bar. However, she failed there too. The man picked up a black silk dress from the table and tasted it, for real. He immediately realized it's a red wine taste. Something is wrong, right? Yes, it is a really expensive dress she screwed up by accidentally pouring red wine on herself. First, this dress wasn't hers, and what was even worse, its cost is around 1 million yen. No way. Her debts were racking up and she couldn't even start paying it back. Haruna fell on the floor. She didn't want to believe it's all happening to her for real. Man in a hat kept his hand on a camera to take some shots. But before that, he asked Haruna to strip off a little bit more if you understand what it means. He offered her a 4 million yen reward for that immediately. He knew she'd become popular in a moment, and he also knew she had no other way but to sell herself like that. But had she no other choice for real? She kicked his balls so hard he almost died. Haruna wasn't that easy girl. She didn't let it happen to her, even if she'll end up in hell. But this man wasn't that easy either. He immediately reminded her of the situation she ended up in. No way she can act like that while being on a breadline with hella big debts. And moreover, she didn't know where she'd end up soon. The last place for those who don't want to sell their bodies but still have to pay debts back. They came to the waterfront, a place where Haruna never expected to end up at. The man gave her a little notepad. There was her photo and her sailor ID, verified by the Ministry of Transport. Yes, sailor. The last place for those who don't want to sell their bodies but have to pay back a lot. A Kagimaru tuna fishing boat. Suddenly, a loud sound of falling downstairs scared Haruna. A silhouette of a girl from above addressed her, ready to take her on the boat. She had long, black, loose hair, and yes, it seems like she's gonna be Haruna's sensei. She looked down at Haruna, waiting for her to board the ship. Haruna was astonished by this boat's gigantic size, but her sensei didn't want to wait for her any more time. Haruna quickly went up the stairs and finally ended up on the board. Awkwardly, she said, "Hello," being unsure how to act in a place like this one. With no time wasting, she started showing Haruna everything around. First, there were quarters, important to know where you may rest. Sensei walked forward a little more to show Haruna her own room. First, Haruna felt relieved that she had her own room, even in a place like this. But her mood instantly changed when she realized she had to rest at this. But there was a PlayStation with a gamepad. Not that bad place, though. Sensei said she'll put out the long line and will teach her first job, nailing. Long line, nailing, and other local stuff was new and unfamiliar for Haruna. But she better fall asleep now, Sensei said and picked her up. Then she put her right onto her sleep place and wished to rest well. Haruna looked at the ceiling and saw blood spots, which scared her even more. And the next sound she heard was the boat's engine. It started moving, finally. For the last time, the man in a hat looked at the boat that was slowly moving away. He put his hands together and prayed for Haruna's life, wishing her the best. Haruna, lying on her sleeping place, was slowly realizing what was going on. She felt really sad, being unable to answer her own questions. How did it come to this? She remembered that day again, the day when her producer gave her a chance to fulfill her dream. Those expensive lessons she took paid off. However, once she got there, it was only the beginning of something even harder and more important. And later it happened. Her idol's career wasn't giving enough feedback for their company. Almost the last possible place, 43rd of 46 places ordered by popularity. Total failure. Haruna promised to work harder and take more lessons, but in the end, it didn't matter. In the end, the money was the only thing that was important. In the end, she ended up in a standby role. Haruna slowly opened her eyes. It was a dream, but at the same time she knew it all happened to her for real. And suddenly, everything went upside down. The boat started rocking on the waves, and poor Haruna ended up not in a really good position. Soon the door burst open, and Haruna ran outside. Seasickness, the classic one. Sensei didn't feel surprised or whatever, while Haruna felt really bad for herself. She started crying. No way an idol like her could throw up in front of people like that. Her sensei appeared suddenly there, just to say that feeding fishes first time in the morning is not what a sailor should do. Then, she reached out her hand and introduced herself as Daya, the captain of this ship. Of course, she told her that throwing up is a thing every sailor has to come through. Anyway, with Haruna, there are 8 people working on this ship. Daya told her to wait and stand by, but Haruna already heard that word that ruined her career. She was about to refuse, but a sudden loud scream scared her. She looked back and saw Daya taking care of a sailor girl. She didn't want anybody to get traumatized or whatever. Everyone is important, and Daya's main task was to not let any accident happen with her team. Haruna slowly approached her and cutely asked for guidance, being very polite. The reaction was insane. "Watch your mouth." Daya grabbed her by the face and pinned to the floor. She told her to not be too polite, like she was just now. Formal speech was banned on the board. Haruna didn't expect such an overreaction from the leader, so she wanted to pee somewhere. The leader showed her where the toilet was, and Haruna immediately ran up there. That was awful. She thought she's a pure idol, but after all the things that happened to her just now, made her feel really bad. Oh wait, no. Really mad, I meant. And then another annoying stuff happens. She can't close the door. It was tied to a pipe in the corner. It was another important part of accident prevention rules, and another annoying thing that happened to Haruna. Everything was against her. She was so annoyed she didn't even care about others walking nearby. Then, the Captain Daya addressed Haruna. They just caught a tuna, and she wanted her to help with holding it down a bit. A pure idol saw a living tuna for the first time. The leader told her to act faster. Tuna's meat will heat up. Tuna's muscles gather heat when it struggles. It makes meat less fresh. So that's why it is important to finish the job as quickly as possible. Haruna was tired of her standby role and decided to take it as a challenge. Daya was surprised a little by the new sailor's determination. First attempt? Well, her first failure. But she didn't want to give up like that. She grabbed the tuna by its back and tried to hold it down. However, it wasn't enough. So, Haruna just jumped on its back. It looked pretty funny for Daya, and, well, a bit sensual, though Haruna disagreed hard with her. She still couldn't understand how it came to this. Daya, with no warning, suddenly pulls out a knife and stabs the fish. Of course, all the blood ended up on Haruna's face and clothes. Daya didn't see it as something bad, though. Then, with an absolutely stoned face, Daya showed a master class for Haruna, though she wasn't mentally ready to watch the whole process. It's pretty disgusting and shocking for an idol like her. This was the nailing, Daya explained. After that, she broke the nerves in its spine to stop it from splashing. And the last one thing Daya had to do, to remove its bowels and insides. Yes, with her hands. Just like that. That was enough to shock Haruna. The captain was glad to see a new sailor in her team, while Haruna was really happy to follow her guidance and encouragement. But for that words, she got hit by a tuna's head. No formalities on the board, remember? But Haruna couldn't understand this rule. Then, Daya explained that talking like that would lead to unwanted hierarchy between the team members, and the less hierarchy a person takes, the less responsibilities it has. But it's absolutely wrong logic. On the board, everyone is a comrade. Somehow it touched something deep in Haruna's heart. Then, the captain asked her to hold out her hand. As a reward, she gave her something liquid and beautiful, and offered to taste it. And again, she thanked Haruna for help. Then, Haruna put this thing into her mouth, and it was soft and tasty. Of course, because it was an arterial bulb from the tuna's heart. Well, it's better to not know some things. After that, Haruna still was thinking of Daya's words. She called her a comrade, and it was something she wasn't familiar with. She remembered her life as an idol, but there was only frustration in the end. Nothing mattered for men in black but money, 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 and money. And the same was applying to other idols in her team. Then, coming back to reality, Haruna realized that this world wasn't as bad as she thought. Well, then she turned back to ask the captain for something, and she better remember that all the girls here were a little bit odd. All the clothes that were covered in blood stink not well. And Haruna asked herself for another time, how did it come to this? Now, She continued complaining about her difficult life, which was really difficult. Tuna blood has to be washed away as soon as possible, Daya said. Well, she better put on some clothes first. Haruna headed right to the laundry. The more shit was happening to her, the more determined she was about bringing her idol's career back. A lot of crazy stuff had already happened to her before, so she was ready for anything. But well, life is full of surprises. Even the laundry was against her. Daya just forgot to warn her that there's only one washing machine and she won't be served first if she came here that late. Then, Haruna decided to at least change her clothes, but even there life was trolling her. Goodbye, clothes. Daya reminded her that she can't work while leaving watertight doors open. But Haruna wasn't listening to her. She was about to cry. But something suddenly caught her attention. She took a few steps forward and was astonished. A clean shirt was waiting specially for her, asking her to take care of herself. First, Haruna looked at it with suspicious sight. Then, she heard Daya addressing a girl named Hibiki. She asked her to help her with some job. Hibiki was another sailor here, just like Haruna, shy and innocent. And what's more interesting, when Daya mentioned Haruna, Hibiki's face turned blush a little. Daya left her alone there, leaving the rope to Hibiki. A sudden hello from Haruna scared her as hell. Haruna was going to help her new sailor friend catch some tuna. She told her full name, Takana Hibiki, the deckhand. In other words, she's a sailor whose task is to clean the deck and watch over the ocean. But what was really important now is, why was she keeping her eyes shut that hard? Hibiki got even more blush on her face. She said it's because it's bright today, but Haruna didn't feel like it was sunny or whatever. Now, Hibiki had a task to unravel the winded rope. They needed that for a longline fishing method. A rope which has 3 or more segments. Every segment has 5 ropes with bait attached. It's effective, but there's still not much tuna. Haruna didn't want to give up that easily since she had a ton of debts. What about Hibiki? Well, she was pursuing someone, not a dead issue like it was for Haruna. First thought, it was about her long-distance relationship, but Hibiki would rather die than tell her the truth. But she had some hints for her. A clumsy person that messes up a lot but still remembers her honor. She was really inspired by that person. Haruna gave her advice to not let that person suddenly take advantage of her. Then, a moment of silence happened. Haruna became serious and told Hibiki about her story, from the moment she was an idol to the moment she ended up on this board. Nothing grandiose, Haruna said, but still it was really important to her. There was a girl she couldn't leave, and she was really determined to come back to her, just to not let her forget their friendship. There was no matter for Haruna if she gets covered in tuna's blood or guts or whatever. She won't leave things like that. Hibiki listened to her story and was astonished, but she almost forgot about her tasks to watch the water better. And it was important to know. There were sharks in the ocean. It scared all the shit from Haruna. Shocked, she fell on the floor with only one question. The hell were sharks doing here? Well, it wasn't a rare case. I mean, it happens a lot more than you might think. It happens due to the fishing method they used. Longline baits attract not only tunas, but more like sharks. People pull them out. Sharks start jumping right on the board. But what surprised Daya badly, Hibiki was acting too mindlessly today, unlike usual. Hibiki felt a bit guilty for such a foolish mistake. She quickly retired, leaving Daya and Haruna confused. Well, now there is a more important problem. The shark was still on the board, and they had to get rid of it somehow. Haruna was pretty scared to even come a step closer towards this ocean monster. However, they had to do this to continue doing their work. Haruna was seriously focused on her main goal, catching a lot of tuna, everything for her idol career. And if she said so, then she'd be glad to take an axe and use it the right way. First, Daya punched the shark into its nose, their weakest spot. Now, while the shark was watching dreams, Haruna had to chop off its neck. But she was hesitating. One wrong move, and she will leave Daya injured. Well, the captain didn't think it would happen, so she just left a mark on the shark's neck and told Haruna to end it quickly. The pure idol swung the axe, taking off any responsibility from herself. Bam, and it's done. Oh wait, the captain forgot to tell her. It's important to not cut through their neck all the way. Even with its head chopped off, the shark's mouth was still full of dangerous teeth. A sudden wave caused chaos on the boat, and the shark's head was already about to take revenge on the pure idol. No way to escape. But thanks God it didn't hurt her, just turned her shirt into rags. "It happens a lot, don't mind it," the captain said with a calm voice. There was a trick she forgot to tell her about, to cut only 2/3 of the shark's neck. That's weird, but she got the idea. Later, in the evening, Haruna was pretty tired, but still motivated to catch as many tuna as possible. But the main secret for her was that good sailor who left her some clothes. Sad it was destroyed by the shark's teeth. Just some rags left after that, and suddenly, just as she wished, some new clothes from nowhere. Like somebody was secretly taking care of Haruna. It looked very suspicious to her, but she took this little gift from an unknown person. But these clothes looked familiar. Hibiki was wearing something like this. "Oh, Hibiki is right there." Haruna noticed her and took her shoulder, but she was naked, and it confused Haruna pretty much. Hibiki got really blush and shut her eyes as usual. Hibiki was worried for Haruna so much that she decided to give her some of her clothes. But she was so shy she couldn't do that other way, but secretly. So, Haruna realized how important it was for her. Remembering those days outside, Haruna felt sad. While she was trying hard, her rival was using cheap tricks to get more sales. She never liked that approach. She was ready to do everything, even borrowing more and more money, but never tried any easy ways. That was her lifestyle. That's why she took off Hibiki's shirt and gave it back to her. She didn't want Hibiki doing something for her sake while leaving herself naked. No way Haruna can do something that cheap. Hibiki looked after her leaving the room. Haruna didn't like that it was too bright outside, but she didn't know the one who was shining was Ruruna by herself. Ruruna was her idol's nickname. And so, Hibiki was adoring her a lot she couldn't even look at her straight. But there's one thing. She's too much into her, and now for me it looks creepy. Meanwhile, Haruna the sailor and Daya the captain were trying to catch some tuna. For the captain, it seemed like this pure idol finally realized that clothes make this life way harder, though she didn't like this kind of a compliment from her. Suddenly, a tuna's head appeared from the water. It seems Haruna almost caught her first tuna, a big one. But wait, no, it was just the leftover from the shark, just a fish's head. And for Haruna, that was more frustrating rather than scary. Her last clothes were spoiled by fish's guts. Though it was only Haruna's problem, the captain felt the best without all this stuff. Daya was provoking Haruna with her no-clothes style. It seemed she didn't care at all for real. She got in a really dirty situation, having no clothes to change. She got a mental breakdown from all this hell and refused to continue, asking to turn the ship back to the ground. But no way they can leave the board without enough tuna. But suddenly she saw something very shiny and shut her eyes. It was somebody Haruna hadn't seen before. Another sailor? Well, yes. She was the shark researcher. This is her favorite thing, talking about sharks. And soon, she'll prove that. The girl looked at Haruna and was surprised to see that funny hat on her head. That was weird, though Haruna wasn't meant to wear that. The girl introduced herself. Her name is Higuro Muko, an oceanographer. It's pretty embarrassing for Haruna to look that weird. Muko offered her to change some clothes. She was about to help her with that. Haruna thanked her, feeling confused. Another woman appeared on the board. She immediately figured out that Haruna was looking like that idol from Kagurazaka 46's. A sudden loud scream from the doorway interrupted her thoughts. Haruna couldn't find anything in Muko's room but this racing swimsuit. But before she could finish, Muko jumped at her with hugs. It seems she liked the way Haruna looked. No, not even like that. She was just amazed by the swimsuit Haruna was wearing. Her favorite feeling of a shark's skin. Haruna didn't get what this weirdo meant, but then she explained it. I mean, she gave her a lesson. Pretty much information Haruna didn't need to know at all. But does she care if she's interested or not? For her, there are no people who don't like shark talks, right? Definitely true. She doesn't even need Haruna's agreement. Haruna likes to talk about sharks. She even offered to go swim with one there. Definitely what she dreamt of. Then, that mysterious woman asked Haruna straight, how can she enjoy life while living in such a hell? Well, in reality, Haruna didn't think it was enjoyable at all. Even less than 1 day she spent here, and she already got into a bunch of problems. Being covered in blood, guts, and something else. Not really good, definitely damn not. She even thought they were bullying her intentionally. Daya didn't get why she was thinking that way, but Haruna knew enough, because she already had that experience when she was an idol. When you are competing in girls' bands, you'll end up betrayed, They will make your life impossible until you'll leave the competition. That's why Haruna was suspicious of anything like that. And that is also why she never liked those cheap tricks other girls were using a lot. So she was sure no matter where she ends up, it always goes like the same. But, of course, Daya and others here weren't like that. There was not much time for them to fool around. It was time to work, and Daya found her a mate, the chief fisherman, Suzukaze Mana, and now they have to catch some mackerels together. Haruna didn't understand anything she told her. But what was more important, Daya knew it would change Haruna's mind a lot. Haruna slowly approached Mana, trying to act polite. Too polite. Mana immediately recognized her as Kirishima Ruruna, that one idol she saw on TV. Did it mean she acknowledged her idol career? Definitely damn not, of course. Mana was even sure all the idols were vulgar, and nobody knows what performing art is. This was the worst thing Haruna heard on this ship. Suzukaze Mana had graduated as a top student from the music school, and she had not just a dream, but a goal. She'll definitely be the next male lead of the opera troupe. Pretty ambitious. I'd even say noble ambitions, as she thought. Then, Mana gave her a strange wooden stick. But this wasn't a magic wand. Don't think that way. This one thing was used to locate mackerels. Then, she threw a vertical rope right into the water, waited a little, and there it was. No magic, but still feels cool. Of course, Haruna wanted to try it by herself, too. Well, the first time is always like that. Mana got another fit of laughter from what she saw. Of course, it wasn't that easy. First, she had to wait a little bit longer, and now she had to put all the bites from the box on the hooks. Finally, Haruna got pretty annoyed that she couldn't do anything and was going to fix that once and forever. But the first time is the first time. She got a lot of ouch moments before she finally finished with the task. Well, with all this blood, it looked more like she was going to catch all the sharks too. Mana called her slow as a turtle and even mocked her for not becoming the center of her idol's band. But Haruna wasn't getting mad too much. That was definitely a rage bait. Mana was a really ambitious person, and Haruna couldn't do much but to acknowledge the fact Mana was talented. And what is more important, her voice was just like castrato. Castrated singers have existed from medieval times to the modern era. They possessed a voice that could enchant everyone by how angelic it was. And that's why it was so amazing for Haruna to accidentally meet someone like her. While the captain was doing her job, Mana continued talking to Haruna. She told her of how baby sharks fight against each other until the only ones who manage to survive are born. Just like people are, she noticed. And that's why Mana was never giving up on her dream. Only one person can become the lead, and Mana definitely was sure. She must be the one, and nothing else matters. Haruna knew what she was talking about. She had to survive in that idol's competition. But she didn't know that cheap tricks would make her lose her place. And that's why Mana risked everything and came to this tuna fishing boat. Her words touched Haruna's heart. That was really what she always wanted from herself. Being straightforward and focused on her dream. However, Mana called her an idiot all of a sudden. Of course, she got it wrong. Mana meant to end up at a men's workplace. But she didn't end up in the men's workplace. She got a girl's workplace instead. She was definitely sure that all her rivals will surpass her while she's losing her time here, on the tuna fishing boat. It totally broke her spirit down. Then, Haruna told her some important words. She never respects those who lack determination, and she hates it even more than any of those cheap tricks users. But then, here appeared Muko, just to tell Mana that she wasn't studying well enough. Holding a bunch of baby sharks, she explained that there are no species of sharks that eat each other in the womb. Even the brutal species like the great white sharks look cute and never attack each other. She was actually holding them in her hands. But Mana didn't want to hear all these consolations. The feeling of being not worthy enough was haunting her all the time. Haruna is also tired of hearing so many self-abusive words and swears loudly that none of them exist without worth. As an example, she pointed right at the shark nearby. Well, even if the shark's price per kilogram was pretty low, Mana didn't know that, right? She was planning to make her feel better, not to dismorale. But this all made Mana even more mad. She didn't understand why Haruna was acting like that. There was a simple explanation. Mana and Haruna both noticed they were similar in many things, but at the same time, they both didn't want to acknowledge this fact. "I'm in your care," Haruna said, and reached out for a handshake, which was aggressively rejected. Well, that was expected from someone like Mana. She told her that she won't be fascinated with someone like her. Well, That's powerful. And in the end, she told Haruna that she's pretty frightening since she forced her to go all out. After that, she left them alone. Haruna didn't get what was going on, but Daya knew that Haruna just cheered Mana up. So, did the line finish coming back? There should have been enough mackerel, and it's actually time for tuna. However, there's another accident. The long line has been cut off. It meant they weren't able to catch tuna anymore. Somebody had to swim right there and bring it back. But who will play the hero's role? It seems that we already have a volunteer for that. Who doesn't like swimming with sharks? Everyone wants to, obviously. Another situation. The same question. This mistake was fatal. The long line slowly disappeared from the horizon. And how on earth do they have to catch tuna then? Haruna asked Hibiki if they still could bring it back. 1/10 was left. 1/10 in their case basically meant nothing. She didn't want to believe it was unrecoverable. And if Haruna has to catch as much tuna as possible to go back home, then it also basically means she got stuck in the ocean forever. But Daya was pretty calm, as the captain should be. Haruna didn't know what to do with her debts. But who said it was the end? A beautiful white-haired girl already installed a GLONASS on the long line's buoy. GLONASS is a Russian equivalent of GPS that works way better in the ocean. She was tall and looked gorgeous, as if she was a well-trained soldier. Daya introduced her to Haruna. October Revolution, the navigator. But since her name in Russian sounds different, and Daya said that in Russian, Haruna didn't get what she meant. Meanwhile, Revo was doing her job, working with the data. Her laptop wasn't just a regular one. It was modified with some special spy stuff, as we see. Revo easily found out the long line's buoy's coordinates with the information she got from GLONASS. That was a really surprising thing for Haruna, who had never seen anything like that before. But how was she able to find out so much private information? Well, Revo fled Russia, and before that she put spyware in GRU's main servers. That means she easily could get any information without hacking anything. It was already hacked by her. Revo made her own GLONASS device while having only a game console's CDMA board. The satellite just picks up its signal, and there we go. Haruna couldn't believe her eyes. Who was this woman? A former member of the Russian Navy Fleet's headquarters. She was the second lieutenant. But Revo didn't agree with politics, and so she left her motherland, came to this boat to continue fighting here. She had reasons, it seemed. Haruna looked at her, and well, she didn't get anything. Her plan was simple. To preserve the House of Romanov, Revo was going to build the empire in Hokkaido, by fishing tuna, of course. Well, finally, the long line has been found. Now the hardest part is to bring it back. They launched the mechanism immediately. Thankfully for Haruna, they were able to bring it back with no accidents. However, there were no tuna caught. That's sad, yes. And what's more sad is that they have to wait for 13 hours to fully retrieve it. Daya sent Haruna to take a lunch break since there was no work for her. While walking through the corridor, Haruna accidentally looked at the mirror. She took a better look at her image. She was still ready to fight. She has to work hard to surpass her main rival in the center's position competition, though that girl didn't do anything but cheap tricks and seduce the producer. Haruna believed that only by trying hard she had to get there. Otherwise, it was pointless to be an idol, and for that, first what she had to do is to never touch fatty food. But the one who made this tasty tuna might be her first enemy at this board. Mayonnaise, tuna, a lot of mayonnaise, soy sauce and spices, and mayonnaise again. The one who cooked this diabolic dish told her that it's okay to eat something like that with mayonnaise, because young tunas have bland meat and have almost no fat. But the one who cared about fat was Haruna. She definitely didn't want to ruin her idol's career even harder. The chef girl laughed and said then, "'Tis a yite." This phrase means, "it's all right," which also means we'll manage somehow. Irako Mamiya, the chef of this boat's kitchen. Since fishing here is literally a physical fight, the food she was making was also pretty high calorie. Something like this one, katsudon. But that was definitely not what Haruna wanted. Suddenly, she realized she was acting not really nice towards the one who actually made this food, especially for her. The chef smiled. "'Tis a yite." She went to the kitchen to make some lighter dishes for Haruna. Skipjack tuna should be cut into chunks, green onions in small pieces, the onions in slices. Then, add ginger and perilla, dried plum, and then cold miso broth with ice cubes. Classic Meiji-era fisherman's meal, tuna gava. Haruna was amazed. She just saw the process of cooking, and now she could taste the meal. There was a lot more than Haruna usually ate before, but without enough food, it isn't possible to catch enough tuna to go back home. She needs energy. So, she thanked her for the meal and decided to taste it finally. I'd like to skip this part of another Shokugeki no Suma reference. I'll just tell you Haruna really liked this meal. She ate it so fast she didn't notice there was nothing left in the bowl. Of course, Haruna was talented enough that she even learned how to do food reportage. Then, she thanked the chef for a meal and took a seat nearby. She ate too much, but well, too late to cry about it. Then, Mamiya offered her a coffee cup, without sugar of course. While the chef walked away, Haruna started looking back at her memories. Why do idols have to do something like food reportage? She asked her senpai Yamashiro. Of course, to survive. The answer confused Haruna. She explained that she didn't need to eat too much if the food reportage goes well. They still can use TV footage. That's the art of the show making. They just started their idol's career, which is full of a non-stop competition. So, that's why she must have to be sure of at least 2 points, the points where she won't lose. And that's also why Yamashiro-senpai taught Haruna how to play the guitar. Yamashiro had a goal to reach the center of attention, be the best of the best. Those days were great. Mamiya came back with a coffee cup, bringing Haruna back to earth. Her belly wasn't used to such huge meal portions, Mamiya noticed, but Haruna didn't want to get fat like this since she had to continue fighting. The only reason she still was standing right there. The chef couldn't understand her there. Anyway, she was in the ocean now, so what was the point of being that serious about her figure? Isn't it better to take it easy? She asked. No, she couldn't take it easy. She mustn't take it easy. Haruna slammed the table. She had to win no matter what, and if she wouldn't do that, then she won't forgive herself. She wouldn't take revenge on her main rival. She wouldn't bring her senpai back from industry for adults. She wouldn't be able to even continue competing with other idols. That's what happens to those who don't make any efforts, the rival said. But how could she say things like that if Yamashiro had been working harder than anyone else? But this girl thought the opposite. It wasn't possible for Haruna to just take all these things easy. She had to win and was even ready to end up in the depths of hell, but never use any of those cheap tricks that girl used to become the number one. That was Haruna's code of honor. She couldn't accept her defeat and was ready to do everything possible to reach her dream. Haruna went so wild she didn't notice how Mamiya hugged her from behind. Tisayite. And somehow, it calmed Haruna down. Unfortunately, right at this moment Rivo entered the kitchen. She saw Mamiya and Haruna in that pose, and, well, she got it absolutely wrong. Haruna asked Rivo if she could use her technologies in case of showing her Japan's Meguro outdoor hall. Rivo asked if she needed that to find out the enemy's position, and Haruna answered straight. Yes, there it is, the scene. Haruna asked Rivo to zoom in a little. She remembered well that at the current time, it has to be a live show of Kagurazaka Band, and the one who was standing in the center? No way. The rival. Haruna didn't want to believe in this mess. She also didn't want anything but to get more tuna immediately, as much tuna as possible. And once Rivo told her there was something big clinging to the long line, Haruna immediately rushed outside. She thought it would be some tuna. However, it was something she didn't expect at all, a giant octopus. And Daya was pretty serious this time, because octopuses are worse than sharks. How did it come to this? The same question. All the girls were fighting for Haruna's life, trying to get rid of the octopus's tentacles. Meanwhile, Haruna had no idea what was going on. Well, it went too far from something funny, at least for Haruna. Do we need any explanations? If even Daya's face turned deep red, how should I write about this scene if this thing is literally trying to fuck? Haruna didn't give a shit to any facts about octopuses. She just wanted to get rid of it quickly. Daya, with all the confidence, told Haruna to stay calm. She started slowly removing tentacles from her face, and suddenly, she got a scratch on her face, and if you understand what it means for an idol, you can feel her shock. Haruna was in full panic mode. Daya didn't understand her. The scratch wasn't that fatal, but it was fatal. She had to win. No way she'll lose her battle like this. Daya told her to calm down and let her remove the octopus from her head. Well, she didn't care what Haruna felt at that moment. It could end way worse if a mysterious girl wouldn't appear here with her magic wand. She hadn't seen Haruna before, it seems. The same applies to Haruna. First, this is not a child, and then she introduced herself. Nagata Mutsu, this boat's supervisor. In other words, she owns this ship. She just left Daya in charge of everything while doing her own stuff. She apologized for interrupting them and went back to make some paste bait. Haruna thanked Daya for saving her from the octopus. It was actually time to continue catching tuna. But Daya told her to not rush all the things down like that. And oh god, she made her evil. Ruruna, the member of National Idol's Kagurazaka 46, explained her position pretty intelligibly. She was sure she had fans on the land who were missing her. However, Daya argued there's no plan to return back home now. First, Ruruna thought she was joking. Then, she addressed the supervisor and asked her to talk with Daya a little. However, she was but on chores duty, taking off all the responsibility from herself. The more Ruruna was trying to get who they are, the more she was going crazy. Someone had to stop her, and the octopus decided to defuse the situation. Well done, I'd say. The magic smoke quickly freed Haruna from the tentacle trap, leaving Haruna unsatisfied and sad. Hibiki was about to stop her, but decided to not intervene. She needed to sit alone somewhere, and she had chosen the canteen. This place reminded her of that one day in the cafe with her senpai. She asked her about that amount of water she was drinking for some reason. Yamashiro calmly told her it's for the show she participates in. She used a term that was unfamiliar for Haruna's innocent mind. So she whispered all the details, and well, it broke her world she lived in into pieces. She got a deep blush and was shocked, but she still had a question. Why does her senpai have to go through it? Yamashiro looked at her surprised by her friend's reaction, but the answer was simple. There were a lot of actresses, like 10,000, and she didn't want to bear the idol title if it's not enough for her. But Haruna didn't like the fact her senpai started her career in AV. There were a lot of different jobs she could get good at. But she answered calmly to her question. She couldn't make her mark. Yamashiro asked her straight, "What is the hardest thing for an idol?" Haruna got caught off guard by that sudden question and was trying to find an answer in her head. But the answer is never hidden. It's always simple. It's to be forgotten, Yamashiro said. She was determined to become the number one in her world. And what about Haruna? She also had to become the number one, but in her own world. And if she wouldn't succeed, Haruna tried to get rid of such not really fine thoughts. It seemed that she regained her determination. There was no time to get stuck into depressive thoughts. In the end, she's Kirishima Ruruna, the one of the national idols. After she regained her spirit, she said goodbye to Mamiya and cheerfully rushed back to work. There were a lot of things to do. Mamiya looked at her and couldn't help but worry. Haruna was almost at her limits. Suddenly, the boat started moving. It caught Haruna off guard, and she fell on the floor. Hibiki told her some great news. They found a fishing place with plenty of tuna.